Well, hello everyone. Today is December 28th, 2017. Always have to check that date because I kind of live on other universes sometimes, or it seems that way. So today we're going to cover several things, but they're all related. I'm going to start with Mars. And I think we're all pretty much, those of you who are listening to this video, are pretty much aware that there are ancient civilizations, remnants of ancient civilizations on both Mars and the Moon. And according to Thoth, there are also current outposts and bases of both, of many kinds, of what we call those of the Humanity Pact, those that are our ancestors, our kindred, and also there are bases of other type beings that are kind of in between neutral, and there are bases of those that we would call, in a way, unfriendlies, that have their own very specific agendas that are of a self-serving nature. I'm not going to call them evil or bad, but they are not. They're the ones, like the ones that do the abductions and whatever, you know. So we have all these different types, and you think, well, how can they all be there together, you know? But it's kind of difficult to wrap your mind around, or at least it is mine. But according to what I received through the stream, they kind of agree to not bother one another and simply coexist in their spaces. We tend to be far more territorial, I guess is what you could say. And the Mars is not a active civilization anymore. So there are beings that just simply have outposts there. And the ultras, the kindred, have, you know, the Cydonia complex and other areas that they work within. But all of these structures, with some exceptions, were originally ancient structures that have been rebuilt or spared the destruction of the original Holocaust there. Now, what is the Holocaust? Again, it's pretty well known that there was a massive nuclear explosion, very massive. So much so that some say it actually created the Van Allen belt out of destroying a planet that was, so it wasn't, you could say that it wasn't an explosion that was aimed at Mars, but one that occurred, and it wasn't a natural explosion. It was a nuclear discharge. This seems to concur with Thoth. He also states to me more recently that, well, he's always told me there were originally two moons. And when I was being studied by Edgar Mitchell, when he came back from the moon, that's my whole long story I won't get into here, but, you know, he did study me in my science work and declared that the science work was very valid, but far beyond anything the scientists at the time were working with. Remember, that was 68, you know, whatever. It'd be a lot closer now because of quantum physics, but then it wasn't. And one of the things I wrote to him, I mean, I was there in person with him as well, but I actually wrote this to him about there being the moon having a lot of underground tunnels and bases extensively, you know, and now they've determined that if you explode something on the moon, that was done recently, it rings like a bell. So it's hollow, well, not entirely hollow, but it has all these things in it. Anyway, when I wrote this to him originally, he agreed with it. He said, well, we know some of what you're talking about already. Now, that was in 1968. So both the moon and Mars have extensive underground situations. Um, and the moon is smaller, so it's more taken up with that, with underground tunnels and things of that nature. So Thoth declared that when this huge event took place, this gigantic nuclear event, one of the things to be destroyed was the second moon that was smaller than the original moon, than the moon we have now. Now, people are saying that the moon we have is totally artificial. Well, it's not totally artificial. It has been artificialized, but it was an original moon, but it's been resituated, it's been reorbited, all kinds of things have happened. There were two moons, this one and the younger one, the littler one, which is actually younger. And when all of that destruction took place, the moon that we have now was reorbited and created into an artificial or semi-artificial moon. Who did that? Well, according to Thoth, it was done by friendlies. However, since that time, apologies, I had to stop for a coughing spell. Since that time, it has been abandoned in the sense of by those who created the original tunneling and whatever, and now has been taken up by residences, some of this kind and some of that kind. It's still kind of hard for me to understand. I think I have pieces missing from the entire picture. But the bottom line is several different races with several different agendas both occupy inside the moon and to some extent outside the moon, mostly inside. But the original creators of the artificiality of the moon were there to preserve, to preserve the integrity of the planet Earth. But that's about the moon. Now let's talk about Mars, because that's really where my focus is right now. And we know that Mars has undergone a terrific nuclear blast. It may not be so evident on the moon, although it is true of the moon as well, but it has been, it didn't get into the most dramatic part of the explosion, although the smaller moon obviously just couldn't handle it. But there's another aspect of all of this, and in this I'm not sure how it fits exactly. But Thoth has talked about the comet that came through from another dimension that was part of all of this. And yet there's also the nuclear explosion. So there's a bigger picture here that I haven't filled in all the gaps to yet, from my perspective, from my Thothic perspective anyway. I'm just telling you some of the pieces, some of the few things that I have received, and what other people are talking about that seems very evident that it is true. But now I'd like to show you, just for a moment, I'm sure all of you have seen a zillion of these pictures. They're out there everywhere. NASA's not trying to conceal them as much as they used to, and that is because they're trying to get us sort of used to these things. And I say NASA, it's not really NASA. It is those that control NASA. They want us to know now more and more, just by not just full disclosure, because then they'd have to admit a lot of things they don't want to, but the pictures and whatever, that there's all this is, they're out there, that aliens are out there. And that's something that I'm going to tell you a little bit about more in a part 2. But they want us to their agenda, which is not platonic, that's not the right word, is it? Gosh, where did I get that word? Oh, what do I want to say? It's not something that they're doing to help us out. It's something that they're doing for their own agenda, but they are releasing more and more in a way that people who are looking can find it. People who are not looking won't find it. So but nevertheless, I want to show you just a few of these pictures that I just sort of pulled out. Now this one, where are we here? Here, this one is one that just blows me away. Now, the only thing that has been done to this photograph, it is an actual Mars photograph. I followed it to the NASA photograph place where you can find them. But the only thing that has been done to this by the person that put this out is it has been put through a very high filter so you can see it better. And he started with a black and white image of it because that's the clearest. And then he put a tint on it so you can see it better. But of course, you can see here in the background, here's the pyramid, part of it one. Here's a ramp. Look at all these buildings here. Look at these buildings here with the windows or the slots in them. And there's more over here. This is obviously, as he said, an intelligent structure. It is not some kind of weird rock formation. There it is, in plain sight. And all that was done to this, and he shows the stages on the video so you can watch him do it, was to put a filter that allows you to see it better. And then it was a black and white image, which was clearer. And then he slightly tinted it, colored it a little bit to bring it out just a little bit more. Then we're going to go to a few other pictures here. Here's one of those skulls like you find in the Peru. The elongated skulls, also like Akhenaten and some of those beings. And here it is right there, but you can see it enlarged. I don't believe it's a statue. There are a lot of statues lying around on Mars, parts of statues. But I believe this is an actual skull that has been preserved because of the different atmosphere Mars has now. And if there was some kind of gigantic nuclear explosion that affected Mars as well, it could have vitrified it or caused it to be more sustainable as an artifact than it would have had otherwise. Then we go to, well, here's a pyramid. There are many pyramids on Mars. This one is one of the more dramatic ones because it's not all silted over for whatever reason. There it is. I mean, it's just as real as can be. And all of these are from, official NASA images and whatever. Here's another one. There's a spaceship of some kind. You can see it, and it's in a hangar. It's in a containment field there. So it didn't just crash land. It's been sitting there, and you can see the side wall here that's collapsed. Probably the roof collapsed or was just simply blown away. But it's in its little compartment. You can see something there, and it's just like out of Flash Gordon in a way. But that is a picture. This picture is either from NASA or it is one that has been Google Mars. They can bring it up really, really sharp from the Mars map images, which are put out, I'm assuming, by NASA themselves or shared by NASA. And then we have, well, I guess those are the ones that I've just pulled up because, I mean, there are a gazillion of them. All you have to do is Google them, and they're just totally all over the place. Now, concerning the very first dramatic shot that I showed you, here's the video that I traced it to.
I won't cover it all today because there's just too much. But there was, I'll just quickly show you this one. This is enhanced. This is the bottom of Logan Pass here. Now, this is obviously from a month or so back, a couple of months back, this set of images. And now the rover is further over to the right here, and you can actually see right up to this Logan Pass here. But this actually shows you more detail of what looks like a castle, massive castle kind of structure. And there's a building. There's some buildings here. See this structure here. Those are buildings. These are buildings. This is intelligent design. You'll see here what look like steps going up here from this part of the castle or structure up here, further up the side of the mountain. And these are not all natural structures. A lot of them are, but a lot of them aren't. There are lots and lots of intelligent structures up here. And here's another part. Now, a lot of people have tried to show this before up here and failed slightly because they've been using the color images. And if you use the black and white ones, as I showed you, you get a lot more clarity. Look how clear that is compared to a lot of the stuff you normally get. Much clearer. It's not brilliant, but it's a bit fuzzy because it's a long way off and it's only a low-res camera. But I'll do more enhancements to these things and put them in at the end of the video like I normally do, so you can see this a bit better. And I'll add a bit more contrast in there and really try and pull some of this stuff out for you. But I mean, you got a double structure here, which is symmetrical. That is definitely not just natural. So let me crack on with it because this will go on too long otherwise. And like I said, all the other stuff I'll put in at the end. There's no time to go through it all bit by bit because we'll be here all day. There's so much to see out there. Now, what I've done with this Eaton Canyon shot is I've selected around it and I've really upped the contrast here. Okay, and I've gone over it with the lighten tool slightly. I've just lightened up that line there and some of these details. Now, I appreciate this is a bit blurred. It is quite a long way off, and the camera really isn't designed to take detailed shots at that distance. Only very large structures will show in the first place. But you can see there's something intelligent here, and there are uprights in here. There's that long, straight structure here, like a roof or top of a building or something. It's kind of built into the side of Mount Sharp here, and this ramp-like structure I initially thought was an entrance, and it may well be like an entrance or something, but there seems to be some kind of technical object here. I'll try and brighten that up. I will do a bit more work on this before I put it in the end of the video, because I appreciate these are hard to see, especially on a mobile device. Who knows? This could be an entrance to a massive underground facility, military base or civilian habitation. Absolutely no idea. But there is definitely something intelligent here. Absolutely no doubt about it. This is not natural. I mean, it's so long and straight.
And then there's this video, What Really Happened to Mars. Will shock you. And indeed, it is very interesting. So let's just hear a little bit of it here.
The problem is when you find out that your government may be keeping mortal threats to your safety secret from you, you start to regard everything they do with even more suspicion than you ought to as citizens of a free country. Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." This is the planet Mars. It is the closest planet in the cosmos. It is like Earth. This is what it looks like now, of course. It is basically a frozen desert, but in the past, it used to have an ocean in the north and be very Earth-like. The Viking lander was a magnificent accomplishment. I mean, here I am talking trash about Jet Propulsion Lab. They are magnificent technicians, and they are following orders, of course, either spoken or unspoken. And they landed on Mars in 1976 in a magnificent demonstration of American technology. All of the time you thought we were going to Mars and the moon for science or some great human adventure. No, we were doing this to show up the Russians and make them think twice about having a war with us, and it worked. We gave them an enormous scientific and technological inferiority complex. And since most of the Cold War was psychological, this was extremely important. Now, when the Viking lander landed, we landed 2 landers on Mars for the US bicentennial. And the first thing they did was sample the atmosphere. Now, the atmosphere of a planet, especially like Earth, tells you a lot about the planet. Our atmosphere is 20% oxygen. The rest is nitrogen, and then there's various noble gases that don't interact with anything. And planetary scientists pay careful attention to what are called the noble gases that don't chemically interact with things. Things like these are like neon, helium, argon. and a gas called krypton, and then there is xenon. Xenon is the heaviest of the noble gases, and it has a very interesting property. It has 5 stable isotopes. So you can run a fingerprint, depending on the relative abundances of these isotopes. You can run a fingerprint and figure out what has happened on that planet, especially as far as nuclear things, because of the xenon. And as I found out when I was investigating this finally, I started out investigating the dark secrets of Mars, and I ended up finding the dark secrets of Earth. Mars has very unique xenon isotopes. They are different than Earth. They are different from Jupiter, from the solar wind coming straight from the sun. They're different from any moon rocks. If you grind up meteorites and get the gas out of there, the xenon in there, all follows the same pattern. It's very similar to Earth. And this is considered the standard solar system mix of xenon that we inherited from the interstellar dust that formed the solar system. But Mars is so distinctive that you probably wondered, how do they know if a meteorite is from Mars? Well, one way they do it is they sample the xenon in it. If the xenon matches Mars, they know it's from Mars, because there is no xenon like it from any other body in the solar system. Here is Mars xenon versus Earth xenon. Earth is in blue. You can see they overlay very well for the isotopes 132, 134, etc. But at 129, Mars has 2.5 times more xenon 129 than the Earth does. And by the way, it has this, you could put any other planet up there and it would look the same. Mars is different from every other planet. It has this big load of xenon 129. And sadly, this is weapons signature. If you match this xenon to the output of a hydrogen bomb, you get a very good match. There is only one place in the solar system where in a planetary atmosphere you find anything like the xenon signature of Mars, and that is the part of the atmosphere of the Earth that has changed dramatically since 1945, when we discovered nuclear weapons. This data, which was published shortly after the landing on Mars, shows that for xenon 129, here's Earth before 1945, or here it is now, and here it is from air samples before 1945, and you can see 10%, roughly 10% of the xenon 129 wasn't there before. Most of the other xenon isotopes haven't changed at all, but 129 has changed considerably, and that's because of the open air nuclear tests and also production of plutonium. In fact, if I was really interested, I could probably try and parse out how much plutonium this intelligent species on this planet has made. It is more than you imagine in your worst nightmares. The human race has been arming itself to the teeth for a big nuclear war since 1945. And the way we know that is because of this xenon 129, because of the testing of nuclear weapons and the production of plutonium. This requires fast neutrons. Fast neutrons don't react as well as the slow neutrons. Now, if we take the weapons xenon and mix it with like 30-70, 30% or normal Earth and then 70% weapons xenon, we get Mars. And this indicates that on Mars, nuclear reactions occurred which dwarf anything that happened on Earth. Most of the Martian atmosphere is a residue from an enormous nuclear explosion. And we can see this when you split atoms. Normally you get two peaks of activity. You get like strontium-90 and iodine-137. Those are both things that you have to watch out for in fallout because they collect in the human body. But in a hydrogen bomb with fast neutrons, the two double peak thing gets all smeared out. Here, on the other hand, is the output of an ordinary nuclear reactor. You can see it produces almost no 129 at all. So the 129 in the Earth's atmosphere is not due to any kind of nuclear reactor operating in a normal way. It is due to weapons. The planetary community is very much beholden to the US government on what it spends time investigating. All it takes is a raised eyebrow from your government sponsor, and your average college professor will completely lose interest in any line of investigation that the US government does not want to encourage.
Okay, I'm going to stop there for a moment because I want to go over, let me see where it is now, to an article I wrote some years ago on Islands in the Stream, one of my gazillion blogs. And so it's short, well, relatively short. I'm going to read it to you. And bear in mind what you just heard, okay? My Inner Planes mentor, Thoth Hurrah, has stated that with the passage through the doorway of 2012, we have entered a new epoch, which he calls a Shoah-Bel, or Christed Dawn. Before we arrived at this epoch, Thoth showed me how many things that had been concealed through falsity would come undone and into the light, and that much of it would create long-denied situations that we, as a world populace, would have to deal with. Now that time has come. We are seeing emerge things many of us had known existed, but most turned a blind eye to. Now they can no longer be denied. The concealing of the extraterrestrial presence on the planet, GMOs, the NSA nefarious operations, and now the nuclear disaster of Fukushima looming upon us. This was obviously written right when that Fukushima thing happened. Yesterday, at our Water Consciousness Meditation Synergy and talk on Wellspring Island in the virtual world of Second Life, Thoth Hurrah suddenly opened the scroll for me, and I began talking about something I had not known before. All those souls on the earth who were born between 1945 to 1963 came in on a soul cycle Thoth is calling Sasjamin, which loosely means the transporting or mirroring. Well, each soul has its individual purpose in life. There are overcycling cycles or birthing waves that reflect a greater yuga these souls sustain, using this term yuga metaphorically here. Excuse me. Thoth also informed me that these birthing waves are encapsulated into larger and larger birthing waves, each given a vibrational consideration within the scope of planetary evolution. I might also say here, excuse me. Okay, we're going to start that again. Sorry, I'm having coughing spells this morning. These allergies are really at me. I thought that when I left Kauai, I might leave a lot of my allergies behind, but no, that didn't happen. So, have to bear with me here. Anyway, what I was saying was, the text reads that Thoth also informed me that these birthing waves are encapsulated into larger and larger birthing waves, each given a vibrational consideration within the scope of planetary evolution. We could also say a vibrational signature within the scope of planetary evolution. I think that might even be at least an equal word for what I'm searching there. Remember, I call what I do source translations, and I believe most channelings are that, but I'm defining it as that because Thoth is. So we're translating these things. We're not receiving every tiny little word. So while vibrational consideration is correct, I believe, for the sentence, I think we can also use perhaps an even more defining word of signature. It's a signature that defines it, and it gives it the consideration that it deserves. This whole understanding was developed in the first land of Lemuria, but as a universal science, it was brought to Earth from Venus by the first Melchizedek, who was the incarnation of Thoth-Ra. The Sas-Jamin soul cycle is now being erased from the timeline. What does this mean? The souls of this cycle are now ready to perform their yuga purpose, which is to vibrationally leap from the cycle which brought them into this world, that's the nuclear detonations, to form another cycle which will carry the flashpoint of the Sas-Jamin into the new epoch. A flashpoint in this instance is a light flash coming from the DNA of the infant at the moment of birth. It is activated by the first breath. This flash sears into the crystalline matrix of the planet, as well into the akasha of that world, for us in the earth. The flashpoint contains all the data, the light codes for the development of planet as a world system, and the lineage of that incarnating soul, genetic, paragenetic, and soul family. This flash imprints into the crystalline matrix of the planet the information the planet needs to stay in sync with the souls it carries, their passage, and the planet's in alignment with the purpose and plan. So, wow, that's saying a lot. Let's just take a look at that for a moment. So when you're born and you take your first breath, flash. It's like a flash recording. It flashes into your DNA and it flashes into the crystalline matrix of the earth. It says, here I am. This is who I am. This is the cycle into which I was born. And this is what I carry not only as a human being, an incarnated soul, but as part of the world consciousness and as part of the planetary plan. So here we follow the path of ascension dynamics. So now allow me to repeat the paragraph above. Actually, I think I just did. But this is a separate one that was up a little further, so I'll repeat it. The Sas-Jamin soul cycle is now being erased from the timeline. What does this mean? The souls of this cycle are now ready to perform their yuga purpose, which is to vibrationally leap from the cycle which brought them into this world to form another cycle which will carry the flashpoint of the Sas-Jamin, that's that nuclear tide that we were born into the new epoch. I say we, those of us who were born as I was between that period of time, which is 1945 through 1963. And that's approximate. I'm sure there's a little bit of overlap, at least on the end. Not it would begin when the first nuclear surface blast was created, which would have been at, Alamogordo, I guess you call it, New Mexico. Thus, the Sas-Jamin souls, all humans born between 1945 through 1963, contain what Thoth is referring to as creation codes, which have been largely destroyed or severely compromised due to the tampering of humanity with nuclear energy in such an irresponsible and careless manner. These codes still remain intact deep within the sealed chambers of the crystalline DNA from all souls whose flashpoint fell within the time frame 1945 to 1963. From among those who incarnated during that period and who are still embodied on this planet, will now either transfer these flashpoints, their flashpoint, to a new wave where the codes can be seared into the crystalline matrix once again, or they will choose to leave this world without doing so. Kind of a crucial decision time. And this is a decision that's going to be made on the higher level of consciousness, subconscious, it's a higher level of consciousness really, but not present in our thinking reality for the most part. In order to understand this fully, we first need to look at why this cycle is being erased and by whom or what. As incarnated souls finish their lifespan and leave the planet, so each cycle is gradually diminished. When the last soul of the cycle leaves, whatever that cycle is we're talking about here, so the cycle is, I think I have a typo here. So the cycle, as a viable energy wave. So the cycle as a viable energy wave leaves with it. Yet with the Sha'Maia-NEAAF cycle, that nuclear cycle, it is necessary for the flashpoints of the soul of that cycle who are now still inhabiting Earth at this time to be transferred into a new cycle that is not a normal birth cycle of this world, but a transitional cycle into the new Earth. In other words, this new cycle is the first of several which will build the soul platform within the new Earth star. Its uniqueness at this time, there may be more like it coming, I do not know, is that these flashpoints from a previous incarnational wave cycle are being transferred into it. Okay, that's kind of convoluted sentencing there, but let me go back to it for a moment. So those of us who had this flashpoint, apparently the flashpoint happened so minutely before the change in the vibration of the planet that was caused by the nuclear blast. Obviously, it's not containing the nuclear blast. It's containing that instant, that millisecond before the blast. And in doing so, it also carries it through into the blast period. It's got this and it's got that. The uniqueness of that, in some way, allows the transference of the flashpoint into the new wave, which is not something that's ever been done on this planet before. There may be more coming, but right now, it's a firstie. Not because people in that time frame are superior beings, but because they happen to be born in that time frame. And, you know, they had all their different reasons why they were born then. So it's really important for us that have been born in this period of time to get our acts together and understand that we are bridging a gap. When I say it's important, a lot of people aren't going to read this or believe this or whatever, but those of you that are listening to me and do resonate with what I'm saying, you know, perk up your ears here and say, okay, I'm part of this period of time, if indeed you are, and I can be more consciously aware that I'm transferring this flashpoint into the new wave before I pass, that I choose to do that. Because if you don't choose to do it unconsciously or consciously, either way you choose it, it's not going to happen for you. There are going to be souls that leave that never transfer the flashpoint. So what gives them the decision to do so if it's unconscious? I mean, if you're reading this and you're conscious to say, oh, I raise my hand, I want to transfer this, then you're part of that consensual reality. But if you're not reading this or don't believe in it or whatever, what allows you to make that choice? Well, we have to realize that we're a lot more than what we're consciously aware of. So these choices are being made on many levels, and they're being offered to individuals through higher elementalized beings who are instructing them and giving them an idea of this and showing them in their inner cellular being the truth of it, not just telling them, but showing them. Okay, so let's continue. Some souls who were born between 1945 and 1963, leaving this physical state, will transfer their flashpoints before they pass. Others will not. Some will make this transfer many years before they transit. Some will wait until their last breath. Each individual comes to this choice internally, based on many factors of the incarnating soul. There is no right or wrong in the decision. The fact that they are coming to a new cycle with our nuclear karma as a world populace is no coincidence in the order of things. Now, let me read that again. The fact that we are coming to a new cycle within our nuclear karma as a world populace is no coincidence in the order of things. So now if we take this and we apply it to what this fellow is saying here, that we literally changed the atmosphere and we supplied more xenon, is it, into the atmosphere because of what we did. This would affect the human beings. This would affect the cells. This would allow those with the flashpoint of that cycle to be able to transform energetically some portions of that before they pass this mortal coil. Exactly how that takes place, I guess that would be a topic for a whole nother video, and I don't even know the answer to that at this moment, but it's an interesting Akashic thread to pursue. I'm just giving you little touches of all these things because we have a lot more to go and what's going to be a little series here. He does say, I'm going to put a link to this particular article where I'm in my other video because I just think it's a really cool video, but I'm not going to go on with it at this time. I've extracted what I wanted to really share with you here about it in regard to how we have changed our planet because of the nuclear blast and how that relates, I believe, directly to the flashpoint that Thoth is telling me about in this article. I also wish to go back and make a correction. I was floundering a little when I was talking about the second moon, and I was thinking, well, that must have been caused by the nuclear explosion, but no, it was not. First of all, my common sense should have told me that. The whole Earth would have been, and the moon would have been irradiated and all of that. So that's not the case. I go back to what originally Thoth told me about the moon, the second moon, that it was destroyed during the time tsunami. So the time tsunami is what destroyed the second moon. Now he's giving me new information that is when the moon we have now was put into another orbit entirely, and was geoengineered to create it to be a part robot, shall we say, a cyborg moon, partly natural and partly not. So that is what happened there. Now with Mars is another situation. And there's some more information. Let me see if I can dig this up here. Well, I couldn't find what I was looking for. But the bottom line of this, I guess, as we're pursuing it at this point, is that Mars had a major nuclear explosion way in the past, but it wasn't just aimed at Mars. According to Thoth and what some other people have inferred, it was aimed at another planet that is no longer there that composes the Van Allen belt. And that Mars was a part of that. Now, does that mean that it was actual part of the original nuclear attack, or were there many nuclear attacks and one was aimed at Mars? I think that might be better explained. I think that is what probably happened. So there wasn't just one bomb going off, so to speak. There was a whole war going on in there. And Thoth is referred to the Nephilim wars on Earth, and that you can find in the texts of the Eastern Indians, about the Nemi, or what, I'm not pronouncing it right, of course, but those ships, the V ships that, and the nuclear, all of that. So some of that was aimed at Earth, but obviously not to the huge degree that it was out there. And that's a whole another topic. And it's something that I've never been really guided to pursue to any great degree, because it's kind of water under the bridge. We need to know that it actually happened, but all the details of it and everything, I don't know. I may change my mind later, but I just don't think that that's something that I want to tunnel into the Thoth Akasha to find out about right now. There's just so much else, and life is short. But the importance of this, that I feel, why I'm talking about it now and all of this, one is the Flashpoint thing. That really got my attention because it correlated so directly. And when we understand that we have changed the direction of the planet, we have literally changed the timeline. The timeline is changing all the time in little micro units, but we changed it big time when we exploded that first blast, that first nuclear blast in the atmosphere. And we've done many more since then. So we altered the timeline, and we continue to alter it a bit every time we do something like that. But the first blast was the main altering, not because it was the biggest by any means, but it was the one that sent that domino effect off into another direction. And now we know that the atmosphere has all of this different quality to it because of that, which I believe, and I'm being shown, but I don't know all the details of it yet, is connected to the whole Flashpoint. But all of this is leading me to a further topic, and actually two different topics that I'm going to put in two separate videos as a part of a series. And this is the first part. So this is part one, and there will be two more parts at least to this series. So I thank you for listening to today's, and we'll see what comes next.